Hi there, my name is Steve Gearhart, and as always, this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching the video this week. I really appreciate that you do. This week is, as promised, Gen Con Part 2. So in the previous video, I talked about Gen Con in general, and this video, Part 2, I'm going to talk about some of the games that we actually played, that Brett and I played, that I think are worth kind of mentioning. And so why don't we just kind of go ahead and get into it. So before I talk about Kodama, let me just reiterate kind of how the game playing worked. At Gen Con, you can kind of go into certain rooms and demo specific games, like gaming corporations will say, hey, try out our game. You can sign up to do that. Or you can go into the Lucas Oil Field where the Colts play, and there's this huge section with nothing but board games, and you walk in there and you can pick one, take it up to the front table and check it out, and take however long you need to take to play it, as long as you stay in that little area there and you eventually return the game with all the pieces, of course. So that's kind of how things work. So there's no real, like, each game has, of course, instructions inside of it, but there's actually nobody there, like in a demo, to explain the actual gameplay. So you kind of have to figure it out on your own. And that's a point I want to bring up, particularly with this first game we're going to talk about, which is Kodama. So Kodama is a card-based game. It's a very simple game. It is very much an all ages kind of game. So what is nice about this game also is that they have a separate set of rules for beginners, for people who are playing this for the first time. And the idea, of course, is to get you used to the gameplay so that you can go on to the more advanced rules, which are a little bit more detailed and have a little bit more rules to them. And, you go forth on and enjoy the game even more. So Kodama, that's a term some of you Miyazaki fans might know about. So Kodama are like these little forest dwellers, and they have a tree that they take care of, and you are tasked to help them take care of this tree. So you start with a trunk card. So it's a very large card, and it's a trunk, and it has various branches going to the edge of the card. So with each turn, you're able to take cards and make branches, so they can go in any direction that you want to go, as long as it makes sense, right? That it kind of looks right. And part of the game is the way you score points is, however many tiles that you put down will have things like mushrooms on it, or it'll have caterpillars on it, or there'll be fireflies or something like that. And on the trunk will be one of those specific objects. So you might have an object that has a firefly, or when I played the game, I had mushrooms on it. So you count the amount of tiles that connect to the trunk, and that's how you kind of score your points. Now, at the end, of course, at the end of the game, you see where you are in terms of points, and the Kodama gives you your last order. And if you win the most amount of points, then that's how you win. Now, the game goes by seasons, and it goes by not all 4 seasons, but 3 seasons: spring, summer, and fall, or spring, summer, and winter, I think is how it goes. And you move this little point counter, so you have a point counter there, and you just move your counter along as you gain points. So that way, that's how you can keep track of points without having to write it on paper. Simple, right? Yeah. So those were the simple 2-player rules for the beginners, Brett and I, and we really enjoyed the game. We enjoyed the look of the game. It's like I said, very simple, all ages certainly, but it also teaches you a couple things. This is a nice game, I think, that like teachers might like to have in their classrooms, right? Like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, whatever. And it teaches them about taking care of nature in a way, and also it's great for being able to learn how to count. So if you have a youngin' and you want to play a game that kind of also has a little bit of a teaching element to it, you can go, oh, you have caterpillars. How many caterpillars? Count the amount of caterpillars. So it's kind of like identifying and counting. So it's a fun little game. You can find it anywhere. You can get it off of Amazon. This is a great, what I like to call a beach game. And I don't know how you guys are, but when I was growing up, we would rent a house for a week or two at whatever beach, and usually the owners would have like 3 or 4 board games. This is one of those kinds of games that would be easy to have at the beach. I mean, wouldn't it be fun, kind of like you're outside in the sun and you're playing a game about nature? It's just a fun little game. I think it retails for $19.99, so it's pretty cheap as board games go. And actually, it's a card game. The box itself is small, so you can pack it very easily. It's just a fun little game. All right, so this next game is called Tanto Cuore. I think is how it's pronounced. As the picture suggests, it's a made game. The rules are not meant to be read with a hentai vibe, but it kind of comes off with a hentai vibe. You know, because you are the master of the house and you have these chambermaids that you must hire and have them serve you, and if need be, need correction. It's kind of silly. So it's a made game. It's a card, and again, it's another card game, fairly compact. This is another game that you can pretty much find anywhere. You can go online and order it. There's a Japanese, obviously it's made in Japan, so there's a Japanese version, and of course we played the English version, meaning, you know, everything's in English, so that helps. So the game, it takes a while to play. Unlike Kodama, which can take literally just only 20 minutes, this game can take up to an hour. If you have more than 2 players. If you have just 2 players, then the game is going to go on for a long time. As a matter of fact, at one point we realized how long this game was going to take just between the 2 of us, between Brett and I, and we just kind of made a quick house rule and said, okay, 3 more rounds, and we, you know, count out the points. So you have a series of cards. Each cards have values. You're given a hand, and each hand you have to play the cards in your hand. It's one of those things where you keep an ever-growing pile of discards, and you keep using the same cards over and over again as you add more cards. Penalty cards, you know, are there to either inflict on somebody else, or they are inflicted on you because they take up space, so to speak. So it prevents you from using other types of cards. The idea of the game is that you have all these different maids, beautiful cards, you know, beautiful little maids on there in their little maid outfits, and the idea is to turn as many of them with victory points. Some of them have victory points, some of them don't, into chambermaids. And once they are turned into chambermaids, nothing can happen to them. Like, nobody can give them a bad habit, which causes penalties, or makes them sick, and which makes them unable to do the thing that each particular maid has an ability to do. So some maids can be like, oh, well, we can give you multiple servings as opposed to 1 serving, so you can make us do 3 tasks instead of 1, or we can generate enough love points to purchase with which to purchase other maids in the game. I know this sounds awful. It's not meant to be that way, but that's just how it sounds. So the idea is that some of the characters, some of the main characters have a higher level of points, have higher level of abilities, and sometimes you might want to make them a chambermaid even if they don't have victory points, because they have certain abilities that can benefit you, and you don't want those to be interrupted. So as you have a 2-player, while this is a 2-player game, you can see how that can kind of stack up, so that you kind of have ridiculous numbers of like, oh, I have 24 love points, I can buy like, you know, 7 maids or whatever. God, that sounds awful. Anyway, so yeah, it's a card game. And at the end of it, you know, again, you count out the amount of points, victory points, and the one with the most wins. This is there are different versions of this game, of the made game, with slightly different rules. There's one that's a butler game, so there's a butler version for ladies who might like to have a butler to purchase and serve them. God, this is awful. I can imagine this is one of those games where the two of us, like I said, we discovered that this game would go on and on and on. But if you have more players with this game, then yes, the game's only going to take an hour because you have multiple people playing, throwing down cards, so it's not as stacked as it is with 2 players. So my recommendation to this is that while this is a fun little game and you can have a little bit of fun with just the terminology of what's going on in this game, it's probably better with 3 or more players. So I would not, as opposed to Kodama, which you can play with just two Kodama, with just 2 players and have a good time. I would strongly suggest multiple people playing this game, and I think that will give you a better sense of gameplay and a better time at it. Again, you can find this pretty much anywhere. If you are into anime, if you like maid girls, if you're, that's kind of your thing, you will find the cards. Actually, the drawings on the cards are very, very nice. As you saw in the picture, that's one example of many. So yeah, if you want to be a master of maids, have fun. Cowboy BebBop, the board game. What is there not to like about any of that? This was another really, really fun game to play. Again, this is one of those things where it's 2 or more players, and I think if you had a 3rd player, it'd probably be a little bit more fun. But even with 2 players, this was a really nice game to play. So basically, you have character cards, like placards. And so you can play a character from the BebBop. You can be Jet, you can be Faye, you can be Spike, you can be Radical Edward. You can choose any of those characters. Within the board game, you can either use a kind of a cardboard colored standout of your character, Ed, or Radical Edward, or Spike, or Jet, or Faye, or there's a little figurine in there as well, but it's just gray as it's not painted. So you have a little placard that denotes your name, which character you're playing. I played Radical Edward. I think Brent played... What did Brent play? I think Brent played Faye. So each character has certain abilities within the game that helps you, that benefits you towards the goal. And the goal is to amass bounties and things, and work your levels up to the point where the end game is going up against Vicious, the big bad of the anime. So, as you're playing your card, you have fuel cells. So you have a little block that you move, and you can have up to 10 fuel cells at any given time. You are given cards. This is much like Tanto Cuore. These cards pretty much determine the actions of what happens. So you can buy fuel. You can get woolongs or money. You can get clues. You have action cards that enable you to do things, like gives you +2 damage if you're in a fight. Those kinds of things. And you bring down a bounty one of 2 ways. And you can either find clues, and the number of clues that the bounty card has on it. So you might need to find 2 clues to bring down a guy, or you can beat him up. You can fight him. And of course, there's points on there that say how many points you need to get to beat the guy. Now, it's not expected of you to get the bounty in one turn, one card turn. It can take multiple card turns, and that's part of the fun of the game. So it can take time, and you work your levels up. So you start at basic levels, basic bounties that are kind of easy, and you ease your way up. As you ease your way up, things become more expensive. It becomes harder to get more woolongs. It becomes harder to buy more fuel cells, and you start really having to use your character's abilities, and you really have to pay attention to the cards in your hand to get there. So you have 3 different planets that you go to. One of them is Io, one of them is Mars, and the other one is Earth. So you can, and then you have a placard of the BebBop, the actual BebBop ship, and you start there. And you expend a fuel point to go to one of the planets to get your bounty, wherever your bounty is residing. You can have multiple characters going after the same bounty. One move that I pulled on Brent was that we both went after a guy. I was Radical Edward, and he's playing Faye, and he decided to take the guy down in a fight. and he almost had it, and he only had one more fight point to get, but his card turn was over. I was able to sneak in and grab the bounty, right? So those are things that you can kind of do. And you can also influence the action of other cards. If you happen to have a card that says, oh, you steal 5 fuel points away from everybody else or whatever. So because it was the two of us, and it would have taken a long time for us to get to Vicious, and because it was only 2 of us, the Vicious card, we kind of went ahead and took a sneak peek and took a look at it, and we're like, there's no way. We're going to be here forever before we can even hope to match up with Vicious and try and take him down. But this is the interesting point of the game. So the point of the game is that as an individual player, the odds of you taking down Vicious is like almost nil. It's not going to happen. And this is the point where you have to work as a team from the BebBop to bring Vicious down. Otherwise, you're taking down bounties individually and you're kind of playing against each other. Now, here's the key about this game mechanic, a certain game mechanic in the game. And if you don't know Cowboy BebBop, the anime, this game mechanic is going to seem very frustrating, and you're going to be like, why is this happening? So it's very hard. It's easy to actually attain Wulong's money. It's easy to attain actual fuel cells, and in some cases some of the bounties are really easy and you get the benefits from them. It's a lot harder to keep them. So everything that you do in this game has a cost to it. It can be a benign cost, meaning that, okay, you spend Wulongs or you spend a fuel cell, or it can be a kind of a penalizing cost where, like, if you're getting into a fight, you are forced to take damage cards. Now, these cards, it's not like you have hit points and you're having them taken away. What these cards do is fill up your deck with cards that are useless. So it's harder to, so if you can only play 5 cards at a time and 3 of your cards are damage cards, that means you only have 2 action cards that you can actually play, which means that you're very limited in what you do. So as you play the game more and more and more, these kinds of things add up after a while, and it becomes harder to maintain fuel cells. It seems like every time you gain a new level, suddenly everything becomes like, well, inflation, massively more expensive. So it's so hard to keep any of this. So if you're a player and you don't know the anime, you're gonna be like, right? But if you know the anime, this game mechanic makes sense, because in the anime, that's what happens to the folks on the BebBop. In the anime, they are always broke. They're always scrounging for fuel cells. They're always like, just barely scraping by to the next bounty. And that's the point of the game mechanic, is to make you really work for your bounties, and that's part of the fun of the game. So if you can understand that game mechanic without having and accepting that without having watched the anime, then this is a fun game to play. If you are familiar with the anime, this is going to be right on track, and you're just going to have a good time. Again, this is a newer game out there, and so you should be able to find this pretty easily online or gaming stores or wherever. In terms of packaging, one of the things I loved about Gen Con excuse me, is walking around just looking at the art and some of the stuff. If you enjoy Cowboy BebBop art, the anime art, this packaging is really slick. So, am I saying play this game? Absolutely. If you get a chance to play it, please do. You're going to have a great time with it. Risk Strike. The card game. Yes, playing Risk as a card game. Card and die game, actually. So if you love playing Risk, but you want to encapsulate from a 4-hour game to a 20 to 30 minute game, this is what you do. Now here at Gen Con, I think this was one of those games that got really heavily advertised at the convention, so we kind of saw it everywhere. And it was kind of interesting. The packaging is, again, kind of slick. It's very... you saw the pictures, blue and gold, and it just looks very interesting. And of course, it's a play on the original board game. So if you liked Risk, which I do, and Brent did. We decided to give this a try. It was, you know, at the game board section, and so we played it, and it is literally the card version of the game. So instead of having all these different counters and everything like that, it's cards. So you have cards that give you like artillery, bombing, infantry, things like that. You have action cards that enable you to countermand somebody else's order. So if someone is about to attack you with their hand of cards, you can actually deploy a card that says countermand orders, and their total turn is taken away. And then it becomes your turn to attack, and hopefully they don't have a counter order card as well. So so you have this card game. The dice are included because, yes, you are still going to have to roll, you know, some, you know, like if you're rolling against 3 infantry against 2 infantry, so you're going to need to figure that out, and that's the same game mechanic as in the board game. So if you're familiar with that, it's a pretty easy. When you dominate a continent, so if you have, like, for example, one of the cards, is a series of cards that you have that you put face down, is what continents are you on? And some of the continents, obviously, like Australia, have like a number 3 on it, so you only need 3 Australian cards and you win the continent, and you get a little coin that has Australia on it, and you place it there and it's done. So there you go. Now, I will tell you this: we found something interesting about this game, and we had to make a house rule by the time we figured this out, and we couldn't really understand why this rule was in there. And and as we actually, after we walked away for the night to go back to where we were staying, we discovered, oh, this is why this rule exists. But you need to make a house rule for 2 players. So there's a part of the gameplay as you're attacking, and let's say you win, right? And so you're about to take a continent card, right? The opposing player can say, no, I want that back, and take it back. Now, if it's a 2-player game, you know, or if it's only 2 people playing the game, then we found that we were just didn't mean anything to fight or do anything like that. You had to have the ultimate hand in order to win anything, because you could just go, just take it back. And we were like going, well, this is kind of a weird rule, and it's an extended gameplay, like really massively long. So we made a house rule to ignore that rule. So if you're playing 2 people in this game, ignore that rule so that you can advance the gameplay, because it doesn't make sense for 2 people. Now, if you stop and think about it, if you have 3 or more people playing this game, then actually that rule makes more sense, because it's not one person going up against another person taking a card. It could be anybody else. So if you have 3 people, you have 2 other people that can vie for that card and fight for it. So that makes a lot more sense. So it's a multiple player rule that I would encourage you to play with, but if it's only going to be 2 of you playing Risk Strike, ignore that rule. You know, just kind of go, no, this isn't going to work. Otherwise, this game is as advertised. 20-30 minutes, fun gameplay. You can go pretty quickly. It's really fun to use some of those action cards where you're able to, like, sabotage. Like, one of the action cards is sabotage. You play that card, and the other person's just like, you know, it's kind of fun. We kept doing that to each other. So yeah, and again, you can find this game anywhere. It's fairly new out there in the gaming world, and yeah, it's cheap. It's a great travel game. You know, like, meaning, you know, if you go to a location, it has to be raining, you can't really do anything. This is a great little game to pull out. So yeah, 2 thumbs up. Alright, as you can tell by the picture, this is an older board game. I do believe it's out of print. It is kind of expensive. If you go on eBay, it's out there. You can buy it, but it's kind of expensive. But is this game worth it? The answer is yes. So it's nice because it's a game that has a two-person version of it as opposed to a multiplayer version of it. So the two-player version limits you to the main island of Honshu in Japan. That's the main middle island there. If you have more people that are playing, if you have 3 or more, then you use the entire island. And there's tiles to it, so you can just, so if there's only 2 people and you only need the Honshu tile, that's all you need to play on. You don't need the rest of the board. So that's kind of nice. The game is sort of based on the old Japanese game of Go. So the idea is to surround resources and towns and villages that have these resources to gain those resources. The more resources you gain, the better chance of you winning. So you have, the first part of the game is you decide which village has a resource. The cities, there's 3 cities on Honshu, so each one you're told, okay, this might have a rice, an administration, and a Buddhist, so cultural, little icons, little statuettes, and those can be in the cities, whereas the villages have one of those kinds of things. And as players, you can, before you start the game, you can place them wherever you want to place them on those village or city hexes. So which each turn you have it's really kind of cool. So you have this thing that you set up that's a screen, and in the Sendoku period, the Warring States period, as battles would rage, generals sometimes would have a fortress, which is literally just like a wall of cloth, a square cloth with one entrance and exit where the general would sit in or the lord would sit in. And this was a way to keep secrets, military secrets. So the game kind of gives you that illusion of that kind of thing. And you have little circles, and they have, on those circles are types of, are one of the resources, so like the administrative, the Buddhist, the rice, could be a samurai, could be a ship, and they have certain numbers on them. So the numerical numbers help you overcome your enemy, right? So then you place those little things face down. So each turn, there's, except for 5, and the 5 have a little Japanese symbol at the bottom, which enables you to see which of these 5 you can use. So you have the ability to use that, and one of the ones that are turned over, and you don't know what they are until you flip them over. And you somehow have to use these 2 and place them on the board to try and capture whatever it is that you're trying to capture. And this is where it kind of looks like Go, a little bit at the game Go, in that you have to kind of surround it. And so you could have like 6 hexes around a city, and 3 be surrounded by your tiles, and 3 tiles by your opponent. But it comes down to who has the greater number, who has more things in common of what's going on. Like, for example, if you overturn a tile and it's a rice, you're going to want that if you're attacking a village that has the rice resource, right? And if there's the number that's greater on there than what your opponent has, then you win. Now, samurai just adds more points to whatever tiles you are using. So that's their utility. And there are navy tiles, which are very interesting. So there's actually little water tiles that you can put on there. So if you like Go, or if you like strategy games in general, Samurai was really nice. And the reason why I bring up this board game, and even though it's hard to find, it's a little bit expensive, is because this is one of the few games that Brent and I played more than once. Like, we usually play it to learn how to play the game, then we play it for real, and then we move on. This game, we figured it out, played around for real, and played another round for real. So we really enjoyed this game. So if you have the ability to buy it and play it with your friends, please do so. It is expensive. We're talking some money. Go on eBay and you'll see what I'm talking about. But if you go to Gen Con or some kind of other gaming con and this happens to be there to be available to you, please play it. You're going to have a great time with it. Takenoko. Oh my goodness, this is a fun little game. Please find this and play it. You might want to own it. You can find it in stores. I actually saw this game and saw the game art, which really intrigued me, and I had read the back, and I was just like, oh wow, this sounds like a fun game. And I found it in a mall store. It was called Mind Games, I think is the chain. So you can definitely find it online and in stores. It's out there. I think it's been out for a couple of years now. It's a beautiful game. Like, again, the art on the box is just very, very intriguing, as you can tell by the picture. But the game pieces themselves are just like, oh my gosh, these tiles are beautiful. It is such a fun game. It is such a fun game. So here's how this works. So you have a die, and the only thing that the die does is at the beginning of each turn, it determines what kind of weather is going on, and the weather can influence the next round of gameplay. So you roll it, and if you have a storm, then you do X. If you have rain, you do Y. And it enables you to do these things, both players or multiple players. It kind of depends. The more players you have, well, I'll get that into a minute. But so whatever action that the weather die gives you, all players get the benefit or have to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. So you have a central tile that you put down. It's the original garden, and then as you play, you take 3 tiles. You choose one and you place a tile down, and you put the other 2 tiles in a discard, and you keep playing these tiles over and over again. And so you can make this kind of like Kodama, where you kind of make this sprawling thing. So make sure you have a big enough table to play with this. So and there's 3 different colors. They do different things on them. And the idea is that you grow bamboo on some of these tiles. And some of these tiles have little markings which says pandas can't do anything on this tile, which is important. Or they might say you can't grow things on this tile, which is also important. You have little sticks that enable you to irrigate from tile to tile to tile. So that's important too. So in order for a tile to grow the bamboo, it has to be irrigated. So they have these little stands where you put like 1 bamboo on there. If you happen to get that turn, you're able to grow a bamboo, and you can actually have little stubs on there, so you can actually grow a bamboo stalk. There are 2 figurines. One is a panda, and the other is a gardener. So each one has a role to play. So in order to grow something on a tile, the gardener has to be on that tile. Now you have what's called objective. Oh, and in order to consume the bamboo, you have to have a panda on that tile. So you are also given a number of what's called objective cards. And these cards are color coordinated to the tiles. So whatever objective you're given, you have to do it on the tile. So if you have a yellow card, you have to do the things on the yellow tiles. And it might be, and it's telling you to, okay, you have to consume 2 things of bamboo. So that means at some point that you're going to have to go onto the yellow tiles with the panda and land on a thing that has bamboo and eat a bamboo stalk. So once you meet an objective card, then you turn that up so you can show that you've done it. Now if it's a 2-player game, each player has 9 objectives that they need to meet, and the first one to get to that point wins. As you have more players, that number comes down. Like 3 players, I think, is 8. 4 players is 7 objective cards each. So that way you're not taking forever playing. You only have, honestly, so many tiles. So it's kind of a weird strategy of movement and taking advantage of tiles. So once you get the tiles kind of going, and you kind of, you're like, okay, one of my goals is to put down 3 yellow tiles and have them irrigated. So, and you don't want to communicate to other people what you're trying to do, of course, because they can block you. So the gardener and the panda figurines are the only figurines that you move. So each person gets a turn of moving either the gardener or the panda. It depends on what their objective is. So it is an amazing little game. It is so much fun. We can totally see this playing with a bunch of our other friends would just love this game to play with. So this is just, you know, if you're one of those people that has game night, right, with your friends, you really should get a copy of this. I don't know what you call it, Takenoko, and get this and bring it to your friends. I think you're gonna have a really great time. This was one of the highlight games that we had that we got to play, and so it was just a real joy. You know, we found it, and I said, oh, I saw this game, and I've been really interested in this, and it was just fun to be able to go to Gen Con and play it for free, right? So yeah, if you find it, get it. It's easy to find. It's online. It's in stores. So yeah, have fun with it, because that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna have fun with it. Okay, so when you're at Gen Con, it's not just about board games. It's not just about role-playing games. There's so many other fandoms that are involved with Gen Con: anime, sci-fi, fantasy. Again, role-playing, cosplay, everything, right? Any geekdom that you can figure out is probably going to show up at Gen Con at some point. So as we were looking for a final game to play, and this was the final game of what we did at Gen Con 2023, Brent found it actually, and we just went, yes, we must play this. We must play this now. So we're big fans of Dune, not just the movie, but actually the books. And we both talk about Dune a lot. There is a lot to talk about Dune. And so we found this board game, Dune board game. We're like, why, yes, we must play this. So we pulled it in, and we discovered that it was based on the David Lynch movie version with Michael McLaughlin and, you know, all those people, you know, Patrick Stewart's in it. And, you know, either you love it or you hate that movie. I love the movie. I think the current version is better, but yeah, there's a special place in my heart for the 1983 Dune version. So anyway, this board game is based on that. So you have, and I'm going to show a quick little video of all the player cards. They're actual pictures from stills from the movies of the characters of Baron Harkonnen, Feyd-Rautha, Beast Raban, Duke Leto, Paul. You know, you'll see in a moment. Anyway, so the idea is that, of course, you can move around. It's a board game that has a circle kind of movement, and there's inside the castle walls, and then there's the desert, and you move back and forth in between these, and you travel around in a ring. You can challenge each other to a duel, to Kanli, you know, as it's called, and you have various cards that give you bonuses to fighting or resisting poison and things like that. So obviously the idea of the game is to eliminate as many of your opponents as you can while grabbing as much spice as you can, and we think that's the game. So here's the thing. We had a rule book. We discovered that there's another half of the rule book that's in another version of the game, in a book somewhere. We're not 100% sure. So, and one of the things that we discovered about this particular game is that the biggest complaint was, it seems like not all the rules are in this game. And it's true, they're not. There are rules to this game that tell you how to play it, but they're in different places in the physical world. So when you buy the game, you're only getting half of the instructions. So we kind of made stuff up, just made up some rules. We were able to find some of the rules and readapt them to the game, and then after a while we're just like, whoever gets killed off first, 3 characters get killed off first, wins the game. That's what we decided. I lost the game. I played the Harkonnens, and you know, of course, I was left with the Baron Harkonnen, and I got killed by Duke Leto. How fitting is that not? So buyer beware. If you happen to find this game out there and you get it, or you want to play it, just know that you're only getting half of the rules, so you might have to make some stuff up or spend a lot of time looking up for the other rules online. So I just wanted to throw it out there, just to say that this is the last game we played. I mean, it was still fun for us, but it was just because whatever. But the actual board game itself is kind of amazing, and so I'm just going to show you a quick view of the board and the character tiles. So beware if you come across this game. I don't know. We'll see. If you have played this game and you've had a similar thing happen to you, please let me know down below. I'd be curious to see what your reaction to it was. All right, so yeah, Dune. So this last game is not a board game. It's an RPG, role-playing game. And I wanted to talk about it because I didn't, in the first Gen Con and in this Gen Con, I did not play any role-playing games. I haven't done that in a little while. Brent, John, and I, a while ago, played a couple campaigns, really small campaigns. And that was about it. So I was kind of curious to see Brent do a role-playing game. And the way that it works out at Gen Con is that if you have a game that you wish to play, if you're doing Dungeons & Dragons and you have a campaign, you can sign up for a table and they'll give you a table, and you have certain resources that the convention will give you to play the game. People can sign up to come to your table. So Brent decided this year to pull out a RPG that he had made, and you can find it online. It's called The Whispering Road. So the picture of this is as you saw, is Brent being the game master of The Whispering Road. And again, I wanted to bring this up because it's a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different than normal role-playing die-throwing games. So the idea behind The Whispering Road is that this is a Miyazaki-based kind of game, meaning that if you're familiar with Studio Ghibli, this is kind of what he's aiming at. This is what he's aiming for. And the idea is not so much to go out and slay the monster. It is actually more about like what Miyazaki tries to do in his films, which is to tell a story and to promote attaining goals and personal growth, so to speak. And so The Whispering Road is this template, and it gives players agency to create their own campaign. I thought that was a really neat idea, so I sat in on the game, and originally I was only going to sit in for like an hour and then go up and do other things, but I was so entranced with what was going on that I stuck around from the beginning to the end. And so there's a template to the game. People make their characters, and there's limited role dying creation of characters. It's helpful if you have a notebook so you can keep notes of what your character does, what your goals of your characters, your abilities of your characters, things that will make your character interesting as you go along the campaign. And it's kind of fun when you have a fun group of people who are willing to just okay, we're not going to go along the rigid 5e standard die rolling. This is, we're making literally making it up as we go along with a certain level of structure to it. And so this game was kind of interesting because a story is being unfolded. What Brent's job as the game master is to help people move along. So move along and to attain the goals and ideals that the characters think that they want to attain. So that's the other thing, is that Brent doesn't set the goals, the game master doesn't set the goals, the players do. So the players look at themselves and they say, what do I want to get out of this game? Well, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to fulfill this ideal. I want to be able to get out there and do the thing, whatever that may be. And so, so then there's a talk at the beginning of before the game starts, and you say, okay, now that you guys have your characters, you know who you are, here's your attributes, here are your abilities, and what do you want to solve in the world? What in the world is there to do for you to do? And in this world, and so, you know, things happen, and the gameplay was a kind of one young lady was a sort of a educator warrior kind of thing going on. We had another kind of roguish character who was into gadgets and things like that. We had a guy who, this was clearly, he's new to role-playing game, but he played it with a lot of gusto, and I think he had a lot of fun. That was kind of cool. He played just the generic hero. You know, he's that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to be one of his goals was to be a good friend to one of the other characters, who was a boy who allows a ghost of royalty, past 927-year-old ghost, to inhabit his body, so the ghost can, you know, still kind of enjoy living. And so, you know, the other guy who wanted to be the generic hero just wanted to be a friend to that guy and make sure that guy is protected, and which is okay, sure. And I thought that was really kind of neat. And also another woman out there was more of a, you know, kind of steampunk, you know, gadgetry / magic kind of girl. Just kind of just into the thing. I want to know how this works. I want to know how to put this into society and make things better, and da-da-da-da. And so this is your party. And so this, you know, the story goes on. They get transported to the isekai, transported to another world where animals appear to be a little bit more intelligent than humans, and kind of from the background run the show, so to speak. You know, this is what they're looking at, and one of the things that they're conflicted with is magic versus industry, magic versus steampunk kind of stuff going on. And so we went through this entire story, and it was just really, really fun, because again, the point of the game is to not make you fail, but even if you fail, you don't lose. Like, you just go, okay, well, that didn't work, so I gotta learn from that, and maybe get help from these other people in my party for the future next time I try to do something. So it's very much of just like, you fail, but you don't fail, and you move forward, and the idea is to attain your goals and to be the things that you want your characters to be in this game. Die roll is very limited. It just helps Brent kind of move the game along. How, you know, what's the next act? There's usually five acts, he says in there. They went through 4 because of time. But it's just a kind of a nice change of pace, where you're not like, okay, I'm gonna roll a 1 die 4, use my clerical magic spell, find traps. All right, failed. Everyone start tapping bricks and tiles. This is a trap. So instead, it's a free flow of ideas, of people talking to each other and having a good time and kind of joking. The guy, I think his name was Joe, who was doing just the basic original hero thing. He said that his character had a weasel, which was kind of fun, and and he used the weasel to great effect. And it was, it's just fun. It was just a fun idea. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story that played out. It was kind of fun, just being kind of a guy just watching the game, observer. I did get to throw my 2 cents in every now and again, which is nice. But I think at this point, I'm pretty sure we're going to Gen Con again next year. And if Brent is up to doing the Whispering Road again, I offer to either actually be a player in the game, because I think I would like to do that, or probably help him out if he wants for me to do maybe some NPC characters for him. Just play the role, so to speak. So anyway, The Whispering Road, Brent Newhall, you can find it online. And yeah, it's just a very interesting non-traditional role-playing game that you should like it. You should get into it. And if you do like Miyazaki, if you like Studio Ghibli stuff, this might be right up your alley. All right, so those were the games of some of the games that we played at Gen Con, some of the things that we experienced and took a look at and had fun with. And hope you guys can take away from this video, maybe buy a game or play games, find somebody who has one of these games and play them, see what you think. If you do, please let me know down below what you thought about some of these games. And yeah, so that's it for this week. Stay good, stay healthy. Summer's almost at an end, and so yeah, but there's a lot left to do in the year, is there not? So stay good, be well, love you guys, and see you next time.